Hello and thanks for joining me for another Cricut tutorial. Today we will be taking a look at the beginner's guide to working with fonts and text in Cricut Design Space. We will be learning about the text edit menu, how to work with script text, writing fonts, when to use attach and weld, as well as how to upload and use new fonts. Let's get started. So here we are in Design Space. Since we're going to be working with text, we really don't need the grid lines at the moment. And I prefer to work without them, especially for video purposes. So in order to turn these grid lines off, if you go right up here in the upper left corner, right between these two zeros, and click that little blank box once, you're going to get rid of the 1/4-inch grid lines. Click it again, and you'll get rid of all of the grid lines. I think this makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on the screen when we're working with text. So let's click on text and add some text. I'm just going to type my name. Perfect. And once we have text selected, you'll notice that the menu bar up on the top turns into a text edit menu. And there's lots of buttons up here. We're going to go through each one and I'm going to show you how they work. So when you click on this down arrow, you're going to notice that you're going to see a whole bunch of fonts. These are fonts that are in Cricut Design Space, and they're fonts that are already on your computer system. That's one of the awesome things about Cricut Design Space is it allows you to use not only their Cricut fonts, and there are tons of Cricut fonts. You're probably most likely going to be able to find what you need right there in the Cricut library. But if you have favorite fonts that you have on your computer, or if you are a font collector like I tend to be, you can use all of those fonts that are already on your computer. So that's what you're seeing when you first click on the down arrow. You'll see the all button is selected, and that means you're looking at all of your font selections. Now you can click on System, and that's going to weed out all of the Cricut fonts and just show you fonts that are on your computer. Or you can click on Cricut, and that's just going to show you the fonts that are in Cricut Design Space. Now you're going to notice that some of these have an A by them. That means if you are an Access member subscriber, you're going to have access to those fonts as part of your subscription. There's no additional fee to use those fonts if they have the A and you are an Access member. And then some of these fonts have a price next to them. And right here, this all mixed up is $4.98. Once you purchase that font, it's yours to use forever. You never have to purchase it again. But that just means I don't own that font already. I can play with it. I can design with it. And if I want to use it to actually make a project, to cut it or print and cut or write, I'm going to have to purchase that font. But again, it's a one-time purchase. Once you purchase it, it's yours forever. Now you're going to notice a couple other pieces of information over here. When you're looking at Cricut fonts, they also tell you whether it's a multi-layer font, meaning that it has multiple layers, usually a shadow layer. It's going to tell you if it's a cutting font, if it's designed to be cut, or if it's a writing font, which means you can put your pen in your Cricut and write with this font. So we've covered this button right here. That's going to show you all the fonts that are in Cricut Design Space and all of the fonts that are on your computer. Keep in mind that's going to show you fonts that are not only fonts that you have purchased or that are part of your access, but it's also going to show you fonts that are available for purchase. So let me just change this back to Cricut Sans font, just so that it's easier to see. Now let's move over here to the filter button. If you click on the filter button, this is going to show you just fonts that I own that are a part of Access if I'm an Access member, or fonts that are on my computer. So if we click on that filter, My Fonts, this is just showing me fonts that I can use without paying anything. So if you want to save yourself some time, you know you don't want to purchase anything, you just want to work with fonts that are on your computer or that you've already paid for or that are part of your Access subscription, you can just click My Fonts. This will show you multi-layer fonts, meaning that these have a shadow layer or maybe these circle layers or some kind of other layer. These are just single layer fonts. These will not have any shadow layers. And this right here is going to weed out all of those fonts that are not going to give you nice writing lines. So that's a quick way to filter that out. These are going to give you fonts that are going to give you nice lines to write with the Cricut. Okay, so that is the first menu item. We've covered the font and the style buttons and what those are used for. This is font size. Now this is, if you're familiar with word processing programs, this is your font size. So this is a 72 size font. I could change this to 12. That's a typical typing font size. Or you can resize just by clicking and dragging. If you drag on this corner right here, it's going to keep everything in proportion with one another. If you unclick this lock button, you can move it disproportionately. Click that back up. Next we have letter spacing. Now this comes in handy sometimes if you're trying to fit text within a box or something like that. It also comes in handy when we're working with cursive text. But if you just click the down arrow, it's going to move your letters closer together. If you click the up arrows, it's going to move them further apart. And it's moving the space between each letter proportionately. We also have line spacing. So let me put another line of text here. And I'll put my name below it. Perfect. So if I was going to use this in a design, I might not want that much space between the top line and the bottom line. So I can just click the down arrow and it's going to move that spacing between the two lines of text. Simple enough. Then we have the alignment feature, which means everything's going to be aligned to the left. That's how it currently is. Everything in center or everything to the right. Super easy. All right, now let me edit that text again and bring it up to one line. Perfect. The next button we're going to look at is the curve button. This is the curve feature for Cricut Design Space, and this is how you get that curved text. We are on the 0 mark, so that means it's not curved. If we move it to the right, it's going to curve it down. If we move it to the left, it's going to curve it up. This is great if you're trying to get text around a circle. And again, you can play with this and then go over here and move your spacing out. So if you're trying to go around a circle, maybe you don't want it quite so bowed, you could pull it back up. And if you want to mimic this text, let's copy this text. I'm going to duplicate it. So say I'm going to go around a square and I want to go up on, or I'm around a circle and I'm going to go down on one side and I want to go back up the circle on the other one. If you click this curve and you see the number 21.789, if I click this one, click curve, put that same number in but with a negative number. So I'm just putting a minus in front of that 21.789, click enter, and now we have a perfect matched curve with the text going in the other direction. So that's a little fun way to use the curved text feature. Let's move this back to 0, or we can just type in 0. And that's going to put me back into a straight line of text. Now we have this advanced feature. So if you look at my name, I kind of, when I just look at it, I think it looks to me like there's more space between this E and the K than there is the rest of it. And I don't particularly like that. And this is a feature that you'll use a lot with script text. So I'll show you that in just a second. But if I wanted to move this E closer to the K and I hit letter spacing, unfortunately, it's moving everything else with it, and that space is remaining proportionately different. So I want to change that. That's when you use this advanced feature. You're going to click on it and click ungroup to letters. Now what that's going to allow me to do is I can move any one of these layers by itself, and you'll notice everything went to its own layer over here. Our text was all on one layer. Now every single letter is its own layer. But now I can click on just this E and just use my arrow keys, and move it over. And now, for me, that looks more proportionate. And now that we have all these layers separated, each one of these layers I can adjust in the text menu as well. So I could, if I wanted for whatever reason to make this particular letter larger, I can do that. And I'm doing it with the buttons. So maybe I wanted to do something fun like this and make this one big. So now I have the ability to work with each one of these letters separately. Now keep in mind, if I wanted to move this word, I can't do that because each letter is separate. So let's get this back to the right size. So they're 108.24. I'm going to change all of these to 108.24. Get this back. All right, so now we have our word back. Now, if we wanted to be able to move that all together, we would select it all, right click and attach. And now we can move this as one item again. Or you could group it together. Either way, I prefer attach because then it still gives me the ability to move all of these. You can also weld this together, but if you weld it, watch what's going to happen in the layers panel. Everything's back to one layer, which is nice, but I can no longer go in and edit this as a font. It is now a shape. So in order to keep a word together, but still be able to go back and edit the text if I want to, I click attach. If you click weld, it's no longer text. It's now a shape. It looks like text, but Cricut Design Space is looking at it as a shape. And if you save the file, you're not going to be able to unweld it. And the only way you could unweld this now is to click undo and undo any step that you have done after. So I recommend when you're working with text, don't weld it unless there's a reason for it. So I'm going to get rid of this and I'm going to put some text back in here. Let's just do my name again. And I'm going to do my name like this. All right. So again, we're back at this advanced menu. Now you're going to notice when we click drop down, we also have ungroup to lines. What that means is if we click ungroup to lines, now I can edit this line of text and this line of text. I've just made two layers out of the one layer by the line. So that's a great way if, say, I was trying to do something maybe like this, make a logo. I could do that without having to undo or reset the size of each letter. I can change the text to ungroup to lines. Does that make sense? Let me show you that again. Text. Lori. So here we are. We have this text. You'll notice that is just one line of text here. I can't resize one word without the other. So in order to be able to resize or change the font of maybe one of the lines without the other, without having to ungroup each letter, I can advance ungroup to lines. And now I have two lines of text. I can click on this one and change maybe this font to this. Maybe that's the look I'm going for. But this allows me to edit different lines of text. One other thing I want to show you, I'm going to add my name again. And we're going to choose a script font. And I'm going to click on the style and click regular. That means it's a cutting font. I see this in Design Space quite often. People will have a very pretty script font, but they're not connected the way they should be. When you're typing script, it should be connected, and it's meant to be connected. So the first thing I do is start with letter spacing, and I pull this letter spacing down and see if I can get it to connect like this. And see, it's starting to connect, but now these are getting they're getting a little too close between here, and these two are not connected. So that's another reason to use the advanced feature. You click ungroup to letters, and now I can manually move these letters. Maybe I won't move that one as much, move this one. So now I can make those look any way I want. I can also pick and drag this if I want to get a little more control, so that it looks more like script text should. So it looks more like that instead of, 6 separated script letters that are not connected. That is another reason to use isolate text. Now, another thing I will tell you, if you're cutting vinyl, a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I cut it and it's cutting between each letter. I don't want it to do that. It looks on the screen like they're all touching. And I can make these a little bit. There we go. It looks on the screen like they're touching, but when it cuts it out, it's cutting between it. That is because these are all separate layers. Everything is looking like it's going to cut individually. Let's hit make it, and you'll see what I mean. See, it's cutting each letter separately. They are not connected. These are not even in the order that I want them. So that is when you select them all and you click weld. Once you weld something, anything that's touching or overlapping is going to be quote unquote glued to the next letter. So if you look here, now everything looks just the way we want it. You can see if we zoom in, there's no cut lines in between those letters. The next item I want to cover is another problem I see quite often, and I probably get messaged at least once or twice a week regarding this. A lot of people want to write with their Cricut. They want to put a marker in and have it write on a card or write on a project. And what happens is they choose a font and they go over here in the layers panel and they change it to write. And this is exactly what's going to write. It's going to write the outline of the letters. And they message me and say, oh my gosh, I just want it to write a single line. Why isn't it doing that? Well, that is because they have chosen a font that, if you click over here in the style menu, does not have a writing style. So when you're choosing your fonts, and we covered this when we were looking at this menu, but you see how this one says single layer cutting, but it doesn't say writing. Watch what happens if I choose this one that says single layer cutting, comma, writing. This one has a writing style. So we're going to change this one to writing, and over here in the style menu right up here, we're going to change it to writing. And there you go. Now you've got a single line that you're going to be able to put a marker in your Cricut Explorer or your Cricut Maker, and it's going to write single lines rather than an outline. So if you're getting an outline when you're trying to write, it's probably because you don't have a writing style font chosen. So make sure when you pick your font that you're choosing one that says writing. If you choose one that does not, when you go to the style menu drop down right here, it is not going to show the writing option, and you're going to get the outline of the letter. So let's click undo and get this back to the way it was. Now let's look at these menus up here on the top. We have undo, redo. That's self-explanatory. If you change something and you decide you don't want it, you can hit undo. Decide you want it back, hit redo. Deselect, I have the font selected. If I click deselect, now it's not selected. The edit menu, this means I can cut. That's not changing it to a cut file. That means it's going to delete it, like cut it out. So if I click that, it's going to take it out. Let's hit undo, hit edit. I can copy and paste it as well. I can hit copy, paste, which is the same as duplicate. Copy, edit, paste. The difference between copy, paste, and duplicate is copy. You can copy it and do some other stuff and then paste it back later, where duplicate is instant. So that's the edit button. We also have flip. So if I wanted to flip this horizontal, I could do that. I can flip it vertical like that, hit undo. Now if you're working with vinyl and you need to flip it, you can do that on the cutting mat screen. You don't need to do that here, but perhaps you're working, you want to, let's just say, let's duplicate this, and maybe you wanted to do something cute like this, flip horizontal, and you meant to do it on your design like this, you can do that. I really don't use that feature very often with text. Sizing. When you're sizing a width or a height, keep in mind it's going to size everything that's selected. So if I'm looking to make 4-inch letters, I want each letter to be 4 inches, and I type in 4 inches right here, it's not sizing each letter 4 inches, it's sizing the entire word to 4 inches. You can see the 4 right here. That means from this end of sunshine to that end of sunshine is 4 inches. If I want each letter to be 4 inches wide or 4 inches tall, then I would have to do the advanced isolate to or ungroup to letters and then manually tell it to put each letter, I'll just do it, ungroup to letters. So then I would go in and hit H and change that H. Say I wanted each letter to be 4 inches high, I could do that. So keep in mind when you're working with a word that when you're, whatever's chosen, everything that's in that box, it's going to take the widest width and make that the width that I choose or the height that I choose. If you want to size things disproportionately, again, you can unlock this, or this lock right up here between the height and the width does exactly the same thing. That's now allowing me to say I want my width to be 5 inches, but I want that height to stay at 2.4. I can now do that. If it's in the lock position and I choose width, it's going to automatically adjust the height. So next button we have is rotate, and this is going to do exactly what you think it's going to do. It's going to rotate. Get back to 0. So if you were working with a design and say you wanted to make sure everything was at the exact same rotation, you're going to maybe do some slanted text, you can just type in, say, 45 degrees. And then you could do your next text and type in 45, and then you know they're all going to be exactly at the same angle. Position is the next menu item. So if we move this text over here, you can see the x-axis is where it's at horizontally. It's right here. It's on the 13.977. And the y-axis is where it is horizontal or vertically, I'm sorry. So it's up here. It's actually above the 0. There we go. So that's just where it's at on the mat. I really rarely use those buttons. You used to use that to align things. Like if you wanted to make sure you had 2 words in exactly the same alignment, you would use that a little bit more. But now they have the alignment feature. We don't really need that. So that is the edit menu, and that is the basics of working with fonts. So one other thing I wanted to cover is perhaps you have a design, and I just typed this up. This is kind of silly, but so you have it all set up and you think, oh, this is exactly what I want to put on a shirt. I want it to print out just like this. So you click make it and you go, oh no, that doesn't look like the way I set it up. This is all over to the left. That's heart's not where I put it. The reason it does that is you need to attach. Design Space looks at it and says, oh, this is a cut file, this is a cut file, this is a cut file, and so is this. I'm just going to put it on the mat to make it cut out in the manner that it's going to save the most material. I don't really care about how you had it laid out, but you worked a really long time and you want it to come out just like this. So what you need to do is select everything that you want to keep in place and click attach. That is telling Design Space, I want you to keep all of these words exactly where I had them. So now if you click make it, it's going to keep that set up just the way you had it. It's going to cut it out just like you had it. Okay, one other thing I get asked a lot is how to add your own fonts. I'm on a Mac, but a PC is very similar. So I like to use the font. Cricut.com. All I do is go over to the font, and I'm just going to pick a font here. I'll click this one. Click download. It's going to download to my computer. I'm going to open it. I'm going to open the file, and you're going to see either an OTF font or a TTF font. If you're on a Mac and you have the option to use OTF, use the OTF. If you're on a PC, you can use either one. And if you're on a Mac and you don't have the OTF, you have just a TTF file, you can use that. But if you have the option on a Mac, use the OTF. So I just double click on the font and click Install Font. And it's now added that font to my font book. That's called the Road Ahead. So then you flip over to Design Space and you hit Text and you look for that font, the Road Ahead, and you see it says no search result. The reason for that is when Design Space starts up, it looks at all your fonts and gets everything ready. So it doesn't know that you just added a font. It's already looked and already figured out what's in your catalog of fonts. So what you need to do is sign out of Design Space, and then you're going to sign back in, new project, and now I can type text and look for that Road Ahead. And there's that font that I just installed. So you don't have to do anything in Design Space to get a font. You just need to sign out and sign back in. That is the end of this tutorial. I hope it answered any questions you may have about working with text or fonts. I do have many other Cricut Design Space for Beginner videos. I'll leave the link to the playlist right below this video. If you have any questions related to this tutorial, please leave them in the comments below. I would be happy to answer those and help you out if I can. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that you want more of this type of content. Please subscribe to the channel, click notifications so that you don't miss any future videos, and feel free to share the video. I hope to see you guys later. As always, never stop making. Bye.